A brief history of economics. Economics is the science that studies how societies produce goods and services and how they consume them. Economic theory has influenced global finance at many important junctures throughout history and is an integral factor in our everyday lives. However, the assumptions that guide the study of economics have changed dramatically throughout history. Here we take just a brief look at the history of economic thought. Key takeaways. Civilizations in the Middle East, China, and elsewhere employed sophisticated financial concepts and produced written guides of best economic practices and norms in the first millennium BCE. Tunisian philosopher Ibn Khaldun, writing in the 13th century, was among the first theorists to examine division of labor, profit motive, and international trade. In the 18th century, Scottish economist Adam Smith used the ideas of French Enlightenment writers to develop a thesis on how economies should work. And in the 19th century, Karl Marx and Thomas Malthus expanded on his work. Late 19th century economists Leon Walras and Alfred Marshall used statistics and mathematics to express economic concepts such as economies of scale. John Maynard Keynes developed theories in the early 20th century that the Federal Reserve still uses to manage monetary policy today. Most modern economic theories are based on the work of Keynes and the free market theories of Milton Friedman, which suggest more capital in the system lessens the need for government involvement. More recent theories, such as those of Harvard University economist Amartya Sen, argue for factoring ethics into social welfare calculations of economic efficiency. Economics in the ancient world. Economics in its basic form began during the Bronze Age, 4000 to 2500 BCE, with written documents in four areas of the world: Sumer and Babylonia, 3500 to 2500 BCE, the Indus River Valley Civilization, 3300 to 1030 BCE, in what is today's Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India, along the Yangtze River in China, and in Egypt's Nile Valley, beginning around 3500 BCE. Societies in these areas developed notation systems using markings on clay tablets, papyrus, and other materials to account for crops, livestock, and land. These accounting systems, arising in tandem with written language, eventually included methods for tracking property transfers, recording debts and interest payments, calculating compound interest, and other economic tools still used today. From the 3rd millennium BCE onward, Egyptian scribes recorded the collection of and redistribution of land and goods. Sumerian traders developed methods to calculate compound interest over a period of months and years. The Code of Hammurabi, circa 1810 to 1750 BCE, the earliest work of economic synthesis, specifies norms for economic activity and provides a detailed framework for commerce, including business ethics for merchants and tradespeople. The first millennium BCE saw the emergence of more detailed written treatises on economic thought and practice. The Greek philosopher and poet Hesiod, writing in the 8th century BCE, laid out precepts for managing a farm in his work and days. Athenian military leader, philosopher, and historian Xenophon built on this in Oikonomicon, a treatise on the economic management of an estate. In politics, Aristotle, circa 350 BCE, took these ideas further still, concluding that while private ownership of property was preferred, the accumulation of wealth for its own sake was dishonorable. The Guanzi essays from China, circa the 4th century BCE, laid out one of the first explanations of supply and demand pricing. The crucial roles of a well-managed money supply and a stable currency. Among key insights was the notion that it was money, not armies, that ultimately won wars. In Western Europe, during the Middle Ages, economic theory was often blended with ethics, as seen in the work of Thomas Aquinas (1225 to 1274) and others. Few of those writers went into the amount of detail that Ibn Khaldun (1332 to 1406), Tunisian historian and philosopher, did. In Al-Muqaddimah, Ibn Khaldun analyzes economic issues such as the peril of monopolies, the benefits of division of labor and the profit motive, and the rise and fall of economic empires. The importance of his work was recognized by Machiavelli and Hegel, and many of his ideas prefigure those of Adam Smith and those who followed him centuries later. The father of modern economics. Today's Scottish thinker Adam Smith is widely credited with creating the field of modern economics. However, Smith was inspired by French writers publishing in the mid-18th century, who shared his hatred of mercantilism. In fact, the first methodical study of how economies work was undertaken by the French physiocrats, notably Quesnay and Mirabeau. Smith took many of their ideas and expanded them into a thesis about how economies should work as opposed to how they do work. Smith believed that competition was self-regulating and governments should take no part in business through tariffs, taxes, or other means unless it was to protect free market competition. Many economic theories today are, at least in part, a reaction to Smith's pivotal work in the field, namely his 1776 masterpiece, The Wealth of Nations. In this treatise, Smith laid out several of the mechanisms of capital production, free markets, and value. Smith showed that individuals acting in their own self-interest could, as if guided by an invisible hand, create social and economic stability and prosperity for all. Even devout followers of Smith's ideas recognize that some of his theories were either flawed or have not aged well. Smith distinguishes between productive labor, such as manufacturing products that can be accumulated, and unproductive labor, such as tasks performed by a menial servant, the value of which perish in the very instant of their performance. One could argue that in today's service dominant economy, the excellent execution of services creates value by strengthening a brand through goodwill and in numerous other ways. His assertion that equal quantities of labor at all times and places may be said to be of equal value to the laborer ignores the psychological costs of working in hostile or exploitative environments. As an extension of this, Smith's labor theory of value, that the value of a good can be measured by the hours of labor needed to produce it, has also largely been abandoned. The Dismal Science, Marx and Malthus. Thomas Malthus and Karl Marx has decidedly poor reactions to Smith's treatise. Malthus was one of a group of economic thinkers of the late 18th and early 19th centuries who were grappling with the challenges of emergent capitalism following the French Revolution and the rising demands of a burgeoning middle class. Among his peers were three of the greatest economic thinkers of the age: Jean-Baptiste Say, David Ricardo, and John Stuart Mill. Malthus predicted that growing populations would outstrip the food supply. He was proved wrong, however, because he didn't foresee technological innovations that would allow production to keep pace with the growing population. Nonetheless, his work shifted the focus of economics to the scarcity of goods rather than the demand for them. This increased focus on scarcity led Marx to declare that the means of production were the most important components of any economy. Marx took his ideas further and became convinced a class war was going to be sparked by the inherent instabilities he saw in capitalism. However, Marx underestimated the flexibility of capitalism. Instead of creating a clear division between two classes, owners and workers, the market economy created a mixed class wherein owners and workers held the interests of both parties. Despite his overly rigid theory, Marx accurately predicted one trend: businesses grow larger and more powerful to the degree that free market capitalism allows.